All members of our jury and our alternates are present, and I think we're ready to call our next witness.
Sergeant Edward Bachman, recall,
Okay.
please.
No. You're reminded you're still under oath.
Yes, sir.
Could you just restate your name and spell it for the record?
Yes, ma'am. It's Edward Bachman, EDWARD-BACHMAN.
B-A,
CHMAN.
thank you.
Okay, you may proceed.
Okay. Sergeant Bachman, back in October of 2014, did you have an opportunity to interview the defendant?
Yes, sir.
How long was that interview?
About 8 hours.
8 hours. Prior to coming to testify today, did you have an opportunity to review portions of that interview?
I did.
Specifically during that interview, did you ask the defendant about his whereabouts on February 6, 2010?
I did.
Showing you exhibits 946 and then the transcript 946A. Is that the material you reviewed this morning?
Yes, sir.
To the best of your ability, is the transcript 946A fair and accurate depiction of the recordings?
Yes, sir.
Court's permission at this time, I'd ask to publish 946 and 946A to the jury.
Okay, so again, a couple of cautions. Number one, again, the transcript is only made to help you listen to the recording, and the only thing that is actual evidence is the recording itself. Secondly, again, if you're going to take any notes on the interview, take your notes in your notebook, not on the transcript, because again, we're going to collect the transcripts when we're done playing there. Also, an additional caution. When law enforcement interviews a potential suspect or sometimes a witness, sometimes they will say things to the person they're interviewing that they know are not true to see what their reaction is. For example, they might tell someone, "Don't tell me you weren't there. I know you were there. I have your fingerprints there." And maybe the person will go, "All right, you got me." Or maybe they'll say, "That's not possible because I wasn't there." Or they may say things that they believe are true, and it's going to be up to you to determine from the evidence whether or not it is true or not. The point of all of that is, just as with when the attorneys are asking questions, the statements of the attorneys are not evidence. So in the interview, the statements of the officer asking the questions is not evidence. The only thing that is evidence is what Mr. Merritt says. So, you know, if they said, "I know you were there, we've got this, we've got this, we've got that," that's not evidence unless you've actually heard evidence of it. What's relevant is what's Ms. Merritt's response to that. Okay? So with that explanation then, yes, we can go ahead and play it. And again, stipulation that the court reporter need not contemporaneously transcribe the recording, but the transcript would substitute for the recorder's transcribing.
Stipulate.
Stipulate.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Jackson, can we have the attorney too, please?
Should be on.
For the record, sorry, it's Austin. On 930 or 946, file 1 is labeled Part 1.
And also, keep it, the Sergeant Bachman indicated that the entire interview was approximately 8 hours. So this is going to be about, I don't know, 15 to 20 minutes of that 8 hours. So you might hear other questions about what might have been said in some of those other 7.5 hours.
Mr. Jackson, lights, this is video. Thank you.
How long ago was that? Did you guys know?
been about a month after the crosses were put up.
Okay.
So, I'm not sure exactly. It was probably within about 3 or 4 weeks, so.
Okay. So, in the week after, so February 4th is the last time you see Joseph. In the week after that, is there any reason that anyone would have seen you or your vehicle up in the high desert area?
Victorville?
Victorville, yeah.
Not that I know of. Unless I went to my sister's. Wait, what time spending it?
Like February 4th, the last day that they're seen.
Right.
I would say for a week after that. Or even, I mean, you can go down for a few days or a week, whatever.
No. Definitely not.
Okay. So you weren't up in the desert at all in that time frame?
Not that I recall, no.
For the record, playing file labeled Part 2 of 946.
Where'd you go February 6th?
I don't remember.
Why would people put you up in the high desert on February 6th?
No idea. I don't even know. The only reason I would ever go to the high desert is for my brother, my sister.
Where would you have gone that day? February 6th. That's a pretty good. I mean, this is 2 days after your friend's missing.
Where would I go if I went to the desert?
Right.
I would either go to my older brothers or my older sister.
Where's that?
One's in Hesperia, one's in Oregon.
Okay. Where at Hesperia?
Just off of Hesperia Road and 3rd.
Okay. And then where's the other one in Oregon?
Off of the old Highway 66.
Okay. February 6th. Go back to where I tell you we got up yours. What were we just asking about?
Phone record.
Okay. Where do your phone records show you're at on February 6th?
I have no clue.
High desert.
Okay.
Where at in the high desert, you think?
Either Hesperia, near 3rd, or in Oregon. That would be the only 2 places. That would be the only 2 places.
Chase, you know where you're at on February 6th. What do you think would be just a shot in the dark where your phone would show you at?
Only if I went to the desert, and I don't recall going to the desert on February 6th, but if I went there, it would be Oregon or Hesperia.
Wasn't either one of those places. If you had to take a shot in the dark, where else would you think that?
That would be it. That would be the only 2 places I could
Okay,
go.
where's the key area in the high desert that we've discussed? What's a key area that this whole case involves in the high desert?
Where Joseph would go to me,
Where's that at?
off of Gallup,
It's actually Sauterville Road.
Okay.
Okay. Why would your phone show you at the gravesite on February 6th?
Not possible. I wasn't there.
Why would your phone records show you there?
Couldn't.
Oh, they do?
It couldn't.
Your phone records show you there. That's why I'm asking.
I wasn't there. The only time I ever went to that place was several weeks later, or a few weeks later, when I went out. First by myself, and then went out with my girlfriend's daughter.
A few weeks after they went missing?
No. After the gravesites were found.
Okay. I don't understand why they would show that. Why they would show you up in that area?
I don't see how they could, because the only 2 places I would have been on the desert, on the entire desert, is at my sister's.
It shows you out there, Chase. That's why I'm asking. I'm trying to help us figure this all out.
It's impossible.
Well, for the phone records, and there are engineers that do all this whip-bang stuff that are way more educated than I are.
If that's the case, then you will find that it's impossible that I was there, because there's no way I was there.
We have one of those whiz-bang engineers that's telling us that you were out there at the graves on February 6th.
And he needs to look again, because I wasn't there.
Okay.
I was, if I went to the desert, I don't remember going to the desert that week, I don't remember going to the desert at all. But if I went there, it would be in Oregon with my sister, because her and I was semi-taking care of her off and on. Or my older brothers in the spring, I just lost there.
It doesn't show either one of those houses.
That would be the only two places I would go with that.
So I'm trying to figure out now on February 4th why you would be down in Fallbrook. And that's what I'm saying. Maybe it's just a shot in the dark that you went down there to grab something or whatever. Now February 6th, this guy's telling me that your phone shows that you're up there in that area. Now, these are either some crazy coincidences or you just have terrible luck, one of the two.
Well, I don't think that I was in Fallbrook, and I know that I wasn't at a grave site.
Now playing file labeled Part 3.
There's a lot of things we can prove without, like whatever we have, forensics, we have vehicle tracks, we have that type of thing that we have. Okay, so again, is it just a coincidence, Chase? Is it just a coincidence that the same person, that a person who murdered the McStay family, because we know that the McStays were murdered on the 4th, okay? We know that they were buried in the desert, they could go off Stony Wells Road. Is it just a coincidence that somebody else has the exact same truck, leaving the McStay house, driving up to the desert? I mean, it's just a coincidence that we have all this stuff, that we have all this evidence?
I don't even remember driving up to the desert, so...
Okay, well, you were in the desert. And you're also at Fallbrook, and we talked about it. Is that just some coincidence? I mean, it sounds like it's crazy coincidence. I mean, and it doesn't make sense to me. How this family's murdered on the 4th, your vehicle's seen on the 4th, you're the last person to talk to Joseph. There's vehicle tracks matching exactly your truck at the gravesite. 2 days after the murder.
I'm sure they match exactly a lot of trucks.
Okay, but a lot of truck drivers don't also have their phone showing in that same area. Okay, so
My phone did not show in that area because I wasn't there.
Now playing file labeled Part 4.
it's another piece of this puzzle that we're trying to figure out who did this thing. And so just another piece against that puzzle where, Chase, you need to be able to explain some of these things, and you're not able to explain it. You haven't given us,
Well, I don't know, you're throwing these things on me like they're facts.
They're not facts, Chase.
And I don't recollect being there, matter of fact, I wasn't there. I definitely wasn't at the desert, and I don't know what to say other than that. I mean, what do you want me to say?
What was your phone number at the time, Chase?
I don't remember.
909-374-0102, does that sound familiar? Okay. These highlighted portions right here, those are all, this all comes back with your coordinates, GPS coordinates of where you're at. That's where the base site's at. Okay. There's a series of phone calls that are made right there that are out at the grave site. I'm not bullshitting you, Chase. You get a series of phone calls from different people while you're out there at the grave sites. What we want to know is what you're doing out there, Chase. I mean, are you out there burying 4 bodies?
Don't know what to tell you, I wasn't there. I have no idea what those coordinates are, but it's not.
Were you out there burying 4 bodies, Chase?
Of course not. No, of course not.
Why is your phone showing on that area?
I wasn't in that area.
Why is your phone showing on that area?
I have no clue, but that's wrong. I wasn't there. There's no way possible.
Well, I'm not bullshitting you, okay?
The first time I was ever anywhere near that area, ever, in my entire life, was the first time I went and saw the cross, or the crosses. The very first time I ever went there.
I'm trying to figure out why these would show out there in the grave out there at the graves, why we had other stuff down on the floor. I mean, help us understand, Chase.
I can't help you understand something that I don't understand myself, because that's not possible.
Well, this is possible.
It's not. It's impossible.
Well, and here, do you know what County's phone number was back at that time?
I don't know.
Okay. It was 909-226-1197, something like that? Okay, there's a series of phone calls from your phone to her phone and back and forth. 909-374-8951, I think that's Taylor's phone at the time.
Maybe.
Okay, there's phone calls to you and her, or between you and her while you're out there. So, I mean, it's not somebody else's phone. It's your phone.
All right, I didn't think it was my phone, but I'm telling you, my phone, that I was not, is not where you're saying.
So what were you doing? What were you doing in the desert then? If you're not, if that's not you at the gravesite, what were you doing in the desert?
If I was in the desert, there was two places I would have been. Either my older sisters and my grand, or my brother.
We talked to both of them, and they said at no point in time around the McStay County disappearance, matter of fact, for like a year before, were you at the desert.
Bullshit. I lived with my sister.
Not at the time that they went missing.
But
They lived in Rancho.
yeah, but
We looked at your phone records, and you didn't show up there at all. You didn't show up there. It's not like you went to you went to the desert regularly. You weren't a regular visitor of the high desert.
yeah, I was actually.
Well, not for your phone records, so
I went up there all the time.
and not for talking with some of your family members. Now whether or not they're trying to give you some alibi and say, oh no, Chase wasn't up here at all.
More than likely.
Why would they do that though?
They're my family. They're my family. Yeah.
Right, the record reflects we have completed playing the portions of the interview with Mr. Merritt. We'll go ahead and collect the transcripts. Anything else on direct,
No, sir, no further questions.
cross?
Thank you. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, sir.
So this interview, just to be clear, the transcripts that the jury got, a couple things. Number one was just a fraction of the entire, as you indicated, 8-hour interview, correct?
That's correct.
And the date on the transcript is October 16th. Do you have your copy of the transcript?
I do.
Do you see that October 16th date at the top?
I do.
So I know that the judge has already indicated that this is not what governs, it's the actual video tape. Do you recall the date being October 16th, or do you recall it being October 22nd?
I believe it was October 22nd, 2014.
Okay, thank you. And the questions that we heard here, you're asking me about the events of 2010, correct?
Yes, sir.
At least the snippet we saw specifically are February 4th and February 6th, approximately in that time period, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And when this interview occurred at the sheriff's main headquarters, correct?
Yes, sir.
And Mr. Merritt was asked to come in voluntarily, correct?
That's correct.
And he came in, right?
He did.
In fact, he came with his daughter. I think his daughter dropped him off, correct?
I believe so. She didn't come inside.
Correct. And he indicated that she was going to go and she brought her girlfriend with her and she was going to go shop for a couple hours or whatever. Is that correct?
I believe so.
So he was under the impression through your prior discussions that it would take a couple of hours. Would that be accurate?
I don't know if I put a time frame on there, but
I didn't say you did. I'm just saying that he had to plan his day and you recall having that set up with him and the gist was it would be a couple hours.
Objection
something
calls
like
for
that.
speculation.
Sustained.
Mr. Merritt never requested to leave the interview. He stayed the entire time. Is that correct?
he did.
Okay. Now, you heard what the judge told the jury, right? Sometimes you'll ask questions, law enforcement officers will ask questions to elicit a response. And that's an interview technique, is that accurate?
Fair to say, yeah.
Okay, and did you employ some of those techniques during this interview?
Some of them, yes.
Okay. So for example, when you were showing, as we saw in the video, you were showing Mr. Merritt it looked like the call data records. It could have been something else, but it looked like the CDRs, the call data records that the jury is familiar with and that have been testified to previously in this case. Is that what you were showing him?
I believe so, yes.
So you were showing him these records, which, quite frankly, I still don't understand. But you were showing him these records, and you were saying, see, we have you at the gravesite on February 6th. That was the gist of it, right?
Just yes, sir.
Okay. And you said that these are the GPS coordinates, right?
Yeah, I told him that the coordinates showed out there in the desert, yes.
And actually at the gravesite.
Correct.
Okay. And you pointed to them and you gave them these records to look at. They're in the records, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And that, of course, was not true, correct?
I believe that was factual, yeah.
Okay. So those CDRs had GPS records of location. Is that your understanding?
That was my understanding, yes.
Okay. Who told you there were GPS coordinates or GPS records of coordinates in those CDRs?
If I remember correctly at the time, we had already done some analysis and plotted out to see that his phone showed him the area up here of the gravesite.
Okay. My question is GPS. Who told you that there was GPS coordinates in those call data records?
Without looking at the phone records, I couldn't say, but my understanding or my belief is that there were GPS coordinates on the call detail records.
Okay. Do you know what GPS is?
Global positioning system.
Okay. And you got that information from from someone in your office, or did you get that information from your expert?
I believe, I don't have the phone records in front of me, but the ones that I showed him at the time had the GPS coordinates on there.
So that was your understanding then? You thought you had GPS records?
Correct.
Okay. Were you here when Agent Bowles testified?
It was excluded from the courtroom, sir.
Okay. Are you aware that in his testimony that he indicated these are not GPS records?
Objection misstates his testimony.
Sustained, also sustained on relevancy grounds.
Those records that you were showing, the call data records, is it your understanding that those records give the location of the cell phone?
Objection relevance as to his understanding.
Overruled, you can answer.
At the time that I looked at them, I don't recall what my understanding of the records were. We had the records looked at, and based off of having the records looked at, it was our understanding that his phone showed out at the gravesites, or out in the area of the gravesites.
Okay, I want to talk about not our, I want to talk about your, because you're the one doing the questioning, right?
Correct.
Okay. Was it your understanding that the call data records gave location data for the cell phone?
I believe so, yes, sir.
Okay. And your understanding then would be not that it gave the location of the cell tower?
I'm not, I've never proclaimed to be an expert regarding that, because the call detail records take into account the azimuth, they take into account where the phone towers are at. There's a whole series of formulas that are placed in with the call detail records. I'm not an expert that's able to plug that in and plot all that, so a lot of the questioning relied on opinions that we got from experts that analyzed the phone records.
What expert did you rely on when you were questioning Mr. Merritt as to the information contained in the call data records?
At that time, I don't recall specifically if it was Bowles that we had spoke with, or if it was someone with our department that did the phone analysis type system.
Did you ever speak with Agent Bowles about the call data records?
I'm sure I was probably part of a conversation with him or part of a meeting with Bowles, but that would have been back at the time of the investigation.
Okay, and do you recall in that meeting that you might have been a part of, whether or not Agent Bowles discussed whether or not these call data records contained any GPS position?
I don't remember offhand, sir.
Do you know whether Agent Bowles told you whether or not these call data records contain information regarding the location of the cell phone or the cell tower?
I'm sure they probably did, but again, I'm not an expert with regard to cell phone records.
Okay. And at this time, during the questioning, would it be fair to say that you were the kind of the lead detective?
It was a
Objection
team.
relevance.
Overruled.
It was a team that was put together. I guess you could say I was the case agent at the time.
Okay. Just like today we have Sergeant Smith, who would be considered the case agent, right?
Correct.
At that time, you would have been considered the case agent.
Sure, yes.
Okay. And you wrote a case summary, correct?
I did.
In your case summary, you indicated that on February 4th, Mr. Merritt was in Fallbrook, right? And he had turned off his cell phone as to not be, so he could evade his location.
That was my belief, yes.
Okay. And then on February 6th, so in other words, you were saying that while he's killing the family on February 4th, he turns off his phone so that his location won't be known, correct?
I don't know that he turned it off at the time he was killing the family, but I believe it was turned off before the murders happened, yes.
And then 2 days later, when he's burying the bodies, he turns it on and makes a series of phone calls to his wife and daughter. Is that
Objection
correct?
assumes facts, not evidence, and is argumentative.
Sustained.
And you wrote that in your summary, that that his phone was on during the time that he's burying the bodies in the desert, correct?
I believe that what it...
Same objection.
Sustained.
Was it your theory, and you wrote in your case summary, that as he was burying the bodies, his phone was on and he made a series of phone calls?
Objection relevance of what his theory is.
Sustained.
You wrote in your case summary that his phone was on February 6th while he was in the...
Objection, hearsay, relevance.
Sustained on relevance grounds.
When you talked about whiz-bang engineers in your interview, did you have any whiz-bang engineers that you were referring to?
No, it was the cell phone records that had come over.
I'm sorry?
The cell phone records that we were sent.
So that was an untruth, correct?
If you call it that, sure. There was a whiz-bang person that did all the work up on the cell phones. So.
Now, during this entire 8-hour interview, there were several times when, I would say, I'm going to be conservative, and I'm going to say dozens of times when you confronted Mr. Merritt and told him, you didn't ask him, you told him that he was in Fallbrook on the 4th.
Objection,
Is that
assumes
correct?
facts, not evidence, and is argumentative.
Overruled.
I couldn't put a number on it, but we did tell him that based on our investigation, he showed in Fallbrook.
Well, we're going to play the whole thing for the jury. We're not going to just play a snippet, so they're going to
Objection,
hear.
argumentative, move to strike counsel's commentary and admonish the jury.
So, would you say at least a dozen times you told him he was in Fallbrook on February 4th?
Objection, assumes facts, not evidence, as phrased.
Overruled. You can answer.
I wouldn't feel comfortable putting a number on it, but I know we told him multiple times that based on our investigation, that we believed he was in Fallbrook on the 4th.
And despite what techniques, whatever interview techniques you were using, no matter how much pressure you put on him, Mr. Merritt was steadfast, and he said he wasn't there the entire time.
Objection, argumentative.
Overruled.
I think that's incorrect. I I don't believe that he was steadfast and said he wasn't there. I think he said that he did not recall being in Fallbrook on that day.
Okay. That was the only, we heard that snippet, but you didn't hear the dozens of other times that you did tell him that he was there, correct? We didn't hear that just now.
Objection, argumentative.
Sustained, also assumes facts not in evidence.
On February 6th, he told you that he wasn't at the gravesite, and you confronted him multiple times on that issue as well, correct?
I did interview him on February 6th.
In this interview, you told him he was at the gravesite on February 6th, multiple times during the interview, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And no matter how many times you asked him, he said he wasn't there. Is that accurate?
Yeah, he didn't admit to being at the gravesite.
You told him that the wheel width of his truck matched the wheel width of the tire tracks at the gravesite.
Objection, misstates the evidence.
Overruled.
I think Detective Hankey, or Sergeant Hankey at the time was detective, mentioned about having the wheel tracks that matched his.
My bad. It was Detective Hankey at the time. You were sitting right there though, right?
I was.
And you heard him, right?
I did.
Okay. And so, but there was two sets of measurements, because you were involved in the measuring of the tire tracks, correct?
I was present. I didn't do the measurements. No.
But you knew what they were.
Yeah, I knew the approximate, yes.
Yeah, and so you knew that there was two different measurements for the two separate tracks, correct?
I don't recall specifically about the distance on the different measurements, but I knew that there were two sets of tracks that were measured out there.
And, well, you were the case agent. You're in charge. We're relying on you now.
Objection, argumentative.
Sustained.
What were the measurements of the tracks out there? Were they the same? The two separate tracks?
Again, we talked when I testified before. There were tire depressions. There was no rich detail to the actual tire marks themselves. I think it was in the ballpark of 73 inches.
Okay. That was one of them. What was the other one?
I don't remember. I don't have the report in front of me, sir.
Was it 73 also?
I don't recall, sir.
If I told you it was 76, would that seem accurate to you?
Objection, lacks foundation.
Sustained. Also sustained on relevance. And cumulative, because we already have the testimony with regard to those specialties.
Your Honor, I'm going to go with permission for about 6 questions. If I could go beyond the scope, it's just foundational for their next witness regarding the measurements of the truck. These haven't been
I'm
covered.
going to object, Your Honor. This is improper in front of the jury. If there's a need for a sidebar, we can have a sidebar to discuss legal issues.
All right, counsel approach with the order. All right, so the request to basically take him as your own witness in a separate area is denied at this time. Anything else on cross?
That's it, thank you.
Anything on redirect?
No, sir.
Okay, you can step down again. I imagine you'll be back, so you're still subject to recall.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and you can call your next witness.
People call Juanita Merritt. I'm good now. Ooh, it's an incline. Do you solemnly state the evidence you'll give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
State your full name, spell it for the record.
Juanita Merritt Merritt, Juanita Merritt.
Okay, you may proceed.
Thank you. Ms. Merritt, thank you for being here because I know that you have some health issues that are affecting you. So if you need to take a break or something like that, just let us know, okay? And you're going to have to answer out loud.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. The court reporter's taking down everything we say, okay? Where did you live back in 2010?
On National Trails Highway, Oregon, California.
In Oro Grande?
Yes.
Okay. And how long had you been living in Oro Grande?
2005.
And prior to living in Oro Grande in 2005, where did you live?
9801 Hesperia Road, Hesperia, California.
Did you live in the high desert for a period of time?
Since 1957.
Okay. And when you lived in the high desert, did Charles Merritt live up there with you?
Not really, because I was older. When I was younger and he was a baby, yes.
Okay.
But I left and moved away when they were in school. I helped take care of them as babies.
Okay. Well, how do you know Charles Merritt?
He's my brother.
Do you see him here in the courtroom?
Yes.
Can you point out where he's seated?
Blue shirt,
Okay.
handsome man over there.
May the record reflect that the witness has identified the defendant?
Record also reflect.
And so he grew up with you in the high desert area, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And in 2010, when you were living in Oro Grande, do you know where he lived?
I think he was off Arrowhead in this. I think it was close to Pasadena. I know I had to take the 210 to get to him.
Do you recall him living in Rancho Cucamonga with Kathy Jarvis?
Yes. Well, that's before that. Yes.
Okay.
At one time. That was after Arrowhead Road. That's right.
Okay.
I apologize.
That's okay. Do you remember him living there in 2010 with Kathy in Rancho Cucamonga?
I don't remember that it was that time frame, but I do remember at one time he did live there.
Okay. And in 2010, were you aware that the defendant had been working with Joseph McStay?
Yes.
Do you recall learning that Joseph McStay had disappeared?
Yes.
Do you remember when that was?
Not exactly. I know that, I talked to my brother and he was worried.
Okay. When you talked to your brother about that, do you know where he was staying at the time?
No.
How did you learn that the McStay family had disappeared?
On the news,
So did the defendant ever call and tell you that they had disappeared?
no. I learned it on the news.
Okay. Did you then reach out to him when you found out that they were missing?
No.
Do you recall being interviewed by Detective Smith in this case back in October of 2014?
Detective Smith,
Yes.
is that the young detective?
The one sitting there? If you would characterize him as young.
That's not the same one I talked to. Oh, I don't remember talking to you, I'm sorry.
Okay. You do remember talking to some detectives, though?
I think he told me he was an investigator.
An investigator? Okay. Do you remember telling the investigators that you had to actually track down your brother to talk to him about the fact that the McStay family was missing?
No.
Would it refresh your memory to take a look at it, a portion of the transcript that is the interview with your detective, or with the detective?
No, I doubt it.
You don't think it would?
I just recently got out of the hospital. I could hardly talk when he was at my house.
Okay. But
I
you
was
do
on-
remember talking with them?
I remember people I remember a young man saying he was an investigator. I didn't even remember what he looked like. I remember him coming to my house. I couldn't sit inside because I was having trouble breathing. I had just gotten out of the hospital. I had surgery in 2013.
Okay.
And I had embolisms in my lungs, and I wasn't even dressed. I was in my house coat. I just recently come home.
Okay, well, let me back up to 2010, when you indicated that you saw that the McStay family had gone missing on the news, right?
Yes.
And how often do you think that you would see your brother around that time frame?
I saw him quite often.
Do you remember telling the detective that you hadn't seen him probably for about 5 years?
No.
And do you remember telling him that you had seen him maybe about 1 year before
No.
2010? No?
I wasn't even in my right mind when I talked to a detective.
Okay.
I just had surgery.
When you would see the defendant, where is it that you would see him?
At my house.
Okay.
Or I sometimes went down to his house.
Okay. Do you remember telling the detective that you would rarely see him, and if you wanted to see the kids, you would have to go to Rancho Cucamonga?
I don't remember that, but I do remember going to Rancho Cucamonga. Because I remember taking a pizza. That's the only thing that comes into my...
Okay. Do you remember, you indicated that you had some surgeries. Do you recall that? Back in
Yes.
2013?
Yes, I could hardly talk when he was there.
And would that be around the time frame where the defendant came to stay with you in 2013?
He came to stay with me at one point to help me because I had another surgery, and he brought me a motorhome so that I wouldn't have to go up my tall steps.
And that would have been around the time that you had the surgeries in 2013?
I had surgeries from 201. I had 4, 5, 6, 7, 9 surgeries total.
Okay. Well, at the time in 2010, you were aware that he was living with Kathy at that time, right?
I don't know if it was that time. My life from 2001 on is a fog.
Okay.
Time I remember some things, but it's just trying to put them in the correct chronological order is almost impossible.
Sure.
Excuse me.
Who were you living with back at that time in 2010?
I live by myself. That's why he came to stay with me?
In 2010?
Yeah,
Isn't it true that you lived with Jim in 2010?
I never lived with Jim,
Okay,
ever. I had my own trailer, and he had his house.
okay,
We've never lived in the same building.
okay. And in 2010, isn't it true that you told the detective that your brother hardly visited?
I don't remember saying anything like that. I saw my brother all the time.
Can I approach your Honor?
Sure.
Just have you take a look at this portion of the transcript and read it to yourself from line 17 through,
This,
17 through 21. And isn't it true, after reviewing that you told the detective that you hadn't seen him for 5 years?
Objection is to the form of the question.
Sustained.
Did you have an opportunity to review the transcript?
yes,
Okay, and after reviewing that, does it refresh your recollection in terms of the fact that you told the detective you hadn't seen him in 5 years?
no. He was doing waterfalls. I was in conversation with Joey about selling waterfalls with him. My brother, because I lost my income, my brother taught me how to make waterfalls.
I would move to strike, Your Honor. There's no question pending.
Overruled. Answer remains.
And do you remember also telling the detective that the defendant never came up and visited?
No,
So if the transcript says that, that would be incorrect?
Objection is to the form of the question.
Sustained.
And isn't it true that you told the detective you had only seen him one time prior and that you met at a Coco's with Kathy and the kids? The year prior to 2010?
I remember Jim driving me to a Coco's to have lunch with them. They were on their way to a river or something with skeeters, but that's not the only time I saw my brother.
Well, back when you talked to the detectives back in 2014,
Which man?
well, the detectives that came to see you, you testified that a couple of
Investigators
investigators,
or the
detectives,
gentleman back there?
do you remember him coming to see you?
No, not him.
Okay, but you recall somebody coming to see you, right?
A young man. I'm sorry, he was much younger.
That's okay. You would have been truthful with him at the time, right?
I wasn't in my right mind. I was on every kind of drug painkiller that you can imagine. They had me drooling out of my mouth when I was talking to him, so how could I recall?
Okay. Well, when you talked to the investigator, you didn't tell him you don't remember anything, right?
Yes, I did.
You did, okay. So if,
I even told him I don't remember because I had surgery, I don't remember. And if that's not in the transcript, then there's a problem.
okay. I don't have anything further, Your Honor.
Cross.
Good afternoon, ma'am. So the much younger person you're speaking of must have been me?
No,
No? No, okay.
never got the pleasure.
You have a brother named Bennett, correct?
Yes,
And-
he's close to my age.
Okay. And that would be Chase's older brother.
Right.
And does Bennett live in the high desert area?
At this time, he lives with me.
Okay. What about in, let's say, 2010?
He lived in Hesperia. I'm not exactly sure what his address was in 2010. There's 2 different addresses where he was. He was buying a house, so I can't remember which one he was at in 2010 to that time frame.
And you've already testified there was a period of time that Chase came to stay with you for a while to take care of you, is that correct?
Yes, quite often.
And was there a time that Chase also went to take care of Bennett when Bennett was having some medical difficulties?
Yes.
Do you recall when that was?
I don't remember the date.
Do you know if it was prior to 2010 or after 2010?
I don't remember. I know my brother took Bennett to his house somewhere to stay in his trailer for a while and they worked together down below somewhere.
And do you recall a time when Chase had to drive Bennett around because Bennett did not have a driver's license?
All of us have to drive Bennett around, yes.
Okay. And do you recall if that was around 2010 or before that?
It would have been after 2004, I know that.
Okay.
That's when it really got sicker and sicker.
So did Chase drive Bennett around? Was that kind of an ongoing thing?
It's ongoing for all of us to drive Bennett.
Overruled.
Okay.
He doesn't drive.
So as far as you know, starting in 2004 and ongoing after that, Chase would come up and help Bennett by driving him around. Is that correct?
Chase and myself, yes. And my sister Cheryl, so.
Thank you, ma'am.
Any other regret?
No, Your Honor. Subject to recall, though.
Sure. Thank you, Ms. Merritt, for your attendance and your excuse. You can leave. If anything else does come up where we might need you for anything else, we'll let you know and try to arrange when you can be here.
Thank you, sir.
And you can call your next witness.
Detective Smith? Sergeant, sorry.
And you're reminded yourself on your own. You may proceed.
Sergeant Smith, did you have the opportunity to interview Juanita Merritt on October 13th of 2014?
Yes, I did.
And can you describe, in terms of the interview with her, what her condition was?
It was fine. She was very talkative. We did speak in the front yard area of her residence. It was a gated residence. She invited me inside. We sat on it was like an iron bench. We had a nice conversation.
So you are the younger gentleman that she was referring to?
Yes, I am.
Okay. When you interviewed her, did she appear to have any trouble recalling events?
She did mention that she had several strokes and that timelines were difficult to her. However, she spoke with ease and did her best trying to recollect all the events.
And did she talk to you or provide any information to you as to when the last time was that she had seen her brother, Charles Merritt?
Yes.
When did she tell you that she had last seen him?
She referenced meeting him at a Coco's that Mr. McGill had driven her to, but she estimated the time frame was approximately 5 years.
It appears that